Ish calls out Ice for his past trolling behavior.
My trolling outside of 2 people only came from critiquing y'all music, and y'all didn't like it.
You were online saying about people.
Yes.
Saying things that were mean.
Bro, you were saying more about than that was just about music too. You fronting.
I'm not fronting.
You
I'm
are fronting.
Well, go ahead.
Was looking for Ice.
Correct.
So if you was built on standing in what you were saying, when was looking for you, you would have came outside and said, I'm right here.
I was still outside, Ish.
That's right, y'all. On the last episode of the Joe Budden podcast, Ish took issue with Ice and the way he conducted himself online. Now, this is all as a result of them talking about the Embiid and Marcus Hayes situation. For those of you that don't know, Marcus Hayes is a writer, and he wrote a negative comment or article about Embiid that got a little too personal. So they started discussing about, this idea of people talking online and having to deal with the repercussions of it in real life. And Ish looks a little bit perturbed, and he asks what Joe and Ice thinks, referencing how they think this is all COE, how people should never really get touched. And Joe says he will never ever want to slap someone merely over words. Then Ish says you should get punched in the face for what you say if it's disrespectful. Ice then says there's consequences for punching people in the face, like retaliation or jail time. Ish then says that he would punch someone if they disrespected him, highlighting how he was willing to meet up with a fan that disrespected his family. Ish then calls out Ice for his past troll ways. This is where it really gets personal, because Ish points out how people who say disparaging things online need to be prepared for the repercussions. Ice seemingly takes this personal because he says he has always been prepared to deal with the backlash from his actions online. Ish looks like Ice is just talking out of his ass. Like, that's how Ish appears to be taking what Ice is saying. Like, Ice is kind of fronting for the cameras when he knows that in the past he wasn't really ready to deal with the consequences of his actions and largely stood inside his home. A little later, Ish recounts how Ice used to say negative things about people that was mean-spirited. Ice tries to say he was just talking about their music, but Ish pushes back and says, wait on, you actually did say really hurtful things. It wasn't just music related. Ish then says people were looking for Ice, and Ice did not keep the same energy by staying outside and was moving a little bit scary. Ice then contends with this, and he says that he was outside, but he was never going to move reckless. Basically meaning like, yeah, I'm going to go outside after I say these things, but I'm not going to make it easy for somebody to find me. Ish is basically saying to Ice didn't stand on his square and would say things online and then move a little bit apprehensive when he was in the public. Now, this was pretty heated to me because Joe tried to speak multiple times and Ice and Ish kept over talking him. Now, Ice is a known Twitter troll, and now his character on the Joe Budden podcast is that of a level-headed girl dad. He doesn't really engage in salacious commentary like he used to, especially on Twitter. I mean, Ice was a big Twitter influencer at the time. It's unfortunate that he never monetized it and didn't reap the benefits off of fan outrage. But, on the other hand, there's Ish, who hates when people talk about personal things in regards to his life. Now, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. This is the first time I'm revealing this on YouTube. Ish actually called me at my job. Ish called me while I was at work. See, I'm going to change the names in the story. I was at my job. I was at my desk. And I see a call on my phone. Pick it up. It's a Jersey number. My coworker, John, I'm going to change his name. He was right beside me. I remember this as clear as day. This was the day that Euphoria Kendrick Lamar had dropped. That's why I remember, because I was listening to it and then I see a call. I pick it up and it's Ish from the Joe Budden podcast. And he was like, Danny. And I literally said this. This is literally what I said. I said, Ish? And then my coworker, because he knows about the Joe Budden podcast, was looking at me like, yo, what the hell is going on? So then me and Ish proceed to have like a conversation. And I want to be clear. I never gave Ish my number. My guess is it was either Imani or another guess I have is Mouse Jones might have given it. because me and him spoke, and he starts to tell me that he believes I'm going to interview somebody and take this content thing to the next level. I quickly assure him that whatever he thinks I'm going to do is not my style. And if you look at the videos I make, it really never gets that personal in terms of trying to dig into people's personal life. Like, I'll never really talk about family members. I'll never really talk about any of that stuff because that's a little weird to me. I don't think you should be talking about people's, let's say for example, parents or cousins or nephews or sons or children. I think that's a little bit odd. But I say this story just to tell you that Ish takes this insanely personal. He hates when people say things that they are not accountable for, which is why he often remains quiet on a lot of the topics. And I think he looks down on Joe Budden for some of the stuff he says about Drake. Like recently, he just called Drake the B word for his actions at the DeMar DeRozan game. And then you have Ice, who has run afoul of a lot of people online, and I think he saw the consequences of it. So he manufactured this personality of a girl dad. I don't think it was manufactured, but I just think he liked that because it was more sustainable. And it led for him to be somewhat of a boring member on the Joe Budden podcast in the early days because we thought we were going to get troll Ice, but instead we got more measured Ice. And it was a rough transition on the pod. And his old days were so bad that apparently people ran into him at a club for what he said online, or maybe something else, and they made him strip. And the reason I know this story is because Meek Mill tweeted it at Ice a while ago and said, yo, they was going to make you strip. And I believe Ice later said that he would have done anything to get home that night, so he really didn't care. And this is just interesting because this represents tension between the Newark boys, as Ish has called out Ice's troll ways in the past. I remember when Ice talked about the Alpo situation, and he was getting on his high horse and saying he hates that people are talking about Alpo and it's disgusting, that's the streets. But then Ish fired back and said, hey, you listen to a lot of the rap music that glorifies street culture, deaths, murders, bodies. So who are you to get on your high horse? And on top of this, Ish has been one of the most vocal people in saying that Ice doesn't really like criticisms from anybody. Like anytime someone on the show gets at him, he takes it really personal. Remember the whole Afrobeats thing where he tweeted something and then wasn't able to defend his point? And then on the podcast, when they were airing out grievances with each other, Ish would say, yo, anytime somebody says something, you get into your shell, you don't know how to make points, you act a little bit moody. So it looks like Ish is pushing the envelope, and I think this is probably going to lead to a blow up between the two at some point, but we need to monitor that. But let me know what you think. Do you think people deserve to get punched in the face for what they say online? Do you think that sometimes people get their feelings hurt over light commentary and they don't know how to deal with it because they're not ready for the visibility of being on certain platforms? Or do you think this is much ado about nothing? All right, y'all, that's my video for today. I like the way this is going. It feels like we got a lot of storylines going at the JBP. First, we have Flip vs. Joe. Improper Improv just didn't do its latest episode, which I'm going to cover. Then we have Ish and Ice, who they're cool, but, I think Ish doesn't like how Ice gets treated a little bit better than him in terms of him not having to give up his personal life. Ice was able to tell Joe, hey, man, stop making fun of my family. Don't do none of that. And Joe stopped. I think Ish looked at that a little bit funny. So a lot is going on. Melissa Ford is developing a kinship with Mark Lamont Hill because she finally feels safe and emboldened, whereas before she felt muted and disregarded. All right, y'all. Follow me on Instagram, The Stop TV. Follow me on Twitter, The Stop TV. I got more content coming. This is Danny from The Stop. Peace.